the war between the Yorubas and the Igbos will go to the nearest, to the highest level. That, oh, the Igbos connive with the North to cut out Tinubu. But Tinubu is not performing. No saying Yoruba person will defend Tinubu. But this time next year, if it happens, the kind of, we will be playing with Rwanda between the Igbos and the Yorubas.
Like the APC, to demonstrate the political sagacity on the field, if they are not afraid that they are not able to deliver, to the extent that they are aware that the people of the Federal Republic of Nigeria are so angry that no matter what they do, they will lose on a fair and square contest. Right. Why don't they leave the level playing field and determine and demonstrate to us that truly, as they say and their proponents are saying, that all is well with the 133 multidimensional people, that all is well with the people that are being killed and maimed every day. So, you see, they are making the APC more unpopular. But like I said, right, they are not supposed to do the homework for the oppositions.
The man who created Nigeria, the person who created Nigeria is called Frederick Lugard. Okay, he's the one who created Nigeria in 1914. And this is what he has to say about the tribes he merged together in Nigeria. Okay, now, I want...
So you see the Nigeria that we find ourselves, Nigeria of tribal sentiments, Nigeria of ethnicity. Nobody cares about the betterment of people's life in Nigeria. What they care is that my person is there. You see the thing, the man says that everybody knows no sane Yoruba man will vote for Tinubu. But still, there will be war. What does that tell you? That all we cares in Nigeria is tribe. Nobody cares if you are getting better or not. And that is not in the genetic makeup of an Igbo man. Igbo man don't think like that. Igbo man is after the betterment of everybody. If you don't care, he cares about his own betterment. If things are not moving well for an Igbo man, he will talk and he will act. But if the president is from another tribe and things are moving well, Igbo man doesn't care. But look at the tribal sentiment here. That they know that things are not going on well, but there will be war. Obasanjo just, finished his tenure before Goodluck Yaradua came in. After that, Buhari. Obasanjo, if you calculate it, you know that it is the turn of the Igbo man to become the president in 2023. But Tinubu quickly planned underground movement with Buhari from the north and took it. That time is not an issue. We are at least three major regions in the south and the southern part of Nigeria. Yoruba has gone. South has gone. Is it not the southeast? Do you need anybody? Do you need a soothsayer to tell you that it's the turn of the Igbo man? Then Tinubu quickly went and planned against it and took that position. Now he has done one tenure, and you are even greedy enough that he must complete it. What a shame. That's why people are saying that Nigeria cannot remain. If you watch what is happening in Nigeria, it seems like Nigerians are just buying time. Very, very unfortunate. Watch this video.
If Obi and Kwaso are to come in and obliterate the southern second term, the war between the Yorubas and the Igbos will go to the nearest, to the highest level. That, oh, the Igbos connive with the North to cut out Tinubu. But Tinubu is not performing. No saying Yoruba person will defend Tinubu. But this time next year, if it happens, the kind of, we will be playing with Rwanda between the Igbos and the Yorubas. That the Igbos will machinate, will make effort to uproot what is so-called Yoruba price. It's not deserving, it's not worthy, but in the streets, people should think about the implications of it. And I'm worried about what will happen if and Obi gets northern support and calls out Tinubu for a second term, which Yorubas wrongly, not meritorily believe is their turn. Something will have to happen next year. I don't want to think about it, but then whatever you sow, you reap.
Sheuna don't hear them. There are so many comments. In fact, if I read comment of that discussion, you will laugh tired. You will just be laughing. In fact, let me read that comment. Let me read it. So let me just give you guys some few comments here. Azubike Zubi said, when Yoruba connived, but he wrote contain, I know no typographical error. When Yoruba connived with North to win in 2023, what did the Igbos did? Yorubas have nothing to do. Then Levi, they said, this man is foolish in his talk. When Yoruba joined the North and removed Jonathan, what happened? Despite that Jonathan is not from Southeast, but Jonathan is not from Southeast, but he mentioned it. Remove Jonathan, what happened? Then Kenneth Ugochukwu said, there is something people don't know about the Igbos. Let's be known that we Igbos don't run away from war, even if it has to be fought in your backyard. We have the strength and courage to stand up for our lives. We will definitely defend ourselves for the man that is threatening war. Then Olawale or Oyin Damola Ekiola, wisdom isn't by age. This is a Yoruba person according to his name. He said wisdom isn't by age. Then Emmanuel Okpara said, what happened when they teamed up with the North to remove Jonathan? When Yoruba joined the North to win the last election, did heaven fall? Such a funny conclusion. This one is Atule Amos. Nothing will happen. Heaven won't even be surprised about it. Is it only Yoruba that form what we have as the South? This is exactly what I just said before. Then the regional and the religious divide will undoubtedly play a significant role in upcoming election, and the growing tension surrounding it is deeply. In fact, Americans are advising Nigeria wisely. Let's tear down this constitution and rewrite it. Because we must, some people, I don't like this idea of people focusing on one direction. That is not, for me, it's not the best. Everywhere you see things happening, try to play your own part religiously. Yes, let's see what happens in 2027. Some people are saying the election will not happen, that this one will happen, this other one. But let's do what we are supposed to do first. By the time we get to the bridge, we can cross it. Having said this, I want you to listen to this analysis. The analysis is vital because, people are reading the situation in Nigeria now concerning 2027. Nigeria is such a surprising country. What you think will not happen will happen. And what you think will happen will not happen. That is Nigeria for you. So, but I believe that with everything that is happening around the world concerning Nigeria, this time around, we are going to get it right. There will be solution at the end of the tunnel because the world are involved now. It will not be business as usual. Let's listen.
This is the most critical, the toughest interview you will be watching about the 2027 presidential election. These guys went purely undiluted, purely unsentimental. They gave facts, figures, and realistic analysis about what should happen if the opposition is seriously interested in winning the next election. They mentioned Jonathan, Atiku, Peter Obi, and Kwankwaso.
Thank you very much for being punctual. Baba Yusuf.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah, always lovely to see you.
Thank you.
Peter Obi and Rabiu Kwankwaso have now abandoned the ADC for the NDC after only months inside the ADC coalition. Does this confirm that Nigeria's opposition still cannot subordinate personal ambition to collective strategy, or do you agree with their decision to defect?
Absolutely, Charles. Spot on. The greed for power, inordinate ambition for power, is beclouding the judgment and consequently the strategy of the opposition political leaders, which is now reflecting on the opposition political parties. Interestingly, in the wee hours of closure of the timeline for primaries, these movements are still happening, while within the political parties, infighting is escalating. I mean, even within the Obi Kwankwaso movement, as you call it, the OK in the NDC, you still have subliminal bric-a-brac about who should be the presidential candidate. Is it Peter Obi or Kwankwaso should lead? At this point in time, I've never seen where coalition or alliances get to this wee hour and they are able to upstage an entrenched incumbent that is working day and night to ensure that they don't even work. But the self-inflicted injury, Charles, is the platform that is set for a very boring, highly predictable 2027 election, which I hope will not be, because if that happens, then it will be a tragedy of our polity.
Indeed. But if Peter Obi and Rabiu Kwankwaso eventually run on a joint ticket under the NDC, as you say, there's still a question mark over what happens. Does that strengthen the opposition nationally, or merely split anti-APC votes further and essentially hand President Tinubu an easier path to re-election?
I think that is what will happen. It will further fragment the opposition, forces and the consequent voting pattern. Because I can tell you, much as the hue and cry and the rising need for alternative platform at this point in time against the APC, and I say it with all sense of responsibility, the sad and depressing situation is the voters are now confused. They are looking for alternatives. They have them in some personalities, whether it is Peter Obi or Kwankwaso or Atiku, but you cannot run as an independent candidate. And there is a provision of the constitution that says you must have at least 25% of a particular number of states spread across. So there is need for that synergy. And that lack of synergy will not give them the vehicle, even if they have it, to take them to the winning point. So yes, Obi and Kwankwaso are forces, regional forces, but the question is, will the numbers add up? In 2023 election, if we go back a bit, the votes, if you combine the outcome of the votes of Peter Obi and Kwankwaso, you had about close to 8 million votes. 8.3 or so, which is less than the 8.7 of Bola Ahmed Tinubu. It won't cut it. The combination of Atiku and Peter Obi gives you about 14 million. Those are the kind of numbers we want to have. But Atiku is in one party, Peter Obi and Kwankwaso is another party. Now we are hearing Goodluck Jonathan, the former president, is considering or he's consulting whatever.
Well, that's what he said.
What he said. But whatever it is, however it turns out, the numbers can only make sense, Charles, if these personalities are able to come together.
Yeah, but the question is, what sort of alignment will there be if they do come together? In other words, what sort of shape will that coming together take? Because there is no way the bottom line is that if Peter Obi ran as Atiku's vice president, he's going to lose his support.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was also something obviously to take into consideration for people like Peter.
Yes. But that's the catch-22. That's why I say it's the inordinate ambition. For an Atiku Abubakar to say, look, you know what? I want to go out with a bang. I want to be the statesman. I want the power to remain in the south. But personally, I'm an apostle of that. As a northern Nigeria, I'm from Kano, but I believe that if we want to continue this trajectory of peace, unity, and equity in Nigeria, we should maintain this south-north, rotation. And if that is the case, of course, Atiku Abubakar, profound respect, has his fundamental human right and say, this is what I will do. For now, if he's able to do that, to identify these two personalities, Obi and Kwankwaso, for example, and say, all people that support me in the interest of unity and progress, let's support this person. But we know it is highly unlikely it's going to happen. And so therefore, recognizing the fact that politics is a game of numbers, it is only when they are together, united, that they are able to win an incumbent. Albeit, even the APC itself is wrangling under internal crisis.
Yes.
But the absence of a formidable platform over and above numbers that are regional. If you look at the spread of Peter Obi, with profound respect to him, and Kwankwaso, they won't be able to win the presidency. They may make an inroad. They may be able to get numbers from about 70 million voters that didn't vote in 2023, which I reckon people will come out and vote. But will those numbers have the spread across the north and southern Nigeria to give them the constitutional requirement to win the election as Peter Obi and Kwankwaso? So I expect a lot of consultation. And more importantly, it is emotional intelligence and consultation and negotiations that will lead to that. The me attitude will not cut it. Indeed. And I will expect maybe a Peter Obi and Kwankwaso also to sit down with an elder statesman like Atiku to say, look, how are we going to share this power? It's a negotiation. But when you come with this attitude of We don't need you, I don't need you. Sadly, that is what is going to happen, even though we have tens of millions of people that are ready to see an alternative. In the absence of that alternative, the ruling party will coast home with an easy fluke win. And that is more dangerous for us, because at the end of the day, the ruling party will be riding on an absolute power. And absolute power corrupts absolutely, because they don't have any qualms doing whatever they want to do, because there's no opposition to neutralize them.
Do you see any scenario where somebody's hand might be forced by, for instance, developments out of the court?
Yes.
For example, the ADC is still mired in a situation there. I mean, increasingly, Nigeria's political parties seem unable to resolve disputes internally without judges becoming the final arbiters. What are your thoughts on the possibility of, for instance, the leading candidates or aspirants in the ADC having their hands forced by developments either internally or out of the courts? So
it is high possibility, and that is why when Kwankwaso and Obi moved to the NCC, it was the most quote-unquote sensible and reasonable thing to do, because it goes without saying ADC will be mired in crisis for God knows how long.
I mean, if for instance, and that's an important point you make there, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but if that, as you said, the move of Peter Obi and Kwankwaso to the NDC was a wise move, might it actually end up, I mean, I don't want to predict what the courts are going to say, obviously, but it may well end up being the only chance the opposition has, really, to take on President Tinubu, couldn't it?
In an ideal situation, Charles, by the time the ADC is boxed into a corner with no alternative,
if it is.
If it happens.
Right.
The potential is, the ideal situation is for the political leaders to rally around the only viable platform and the only viable candidates to ensure political sustainability for their political future. But you see, in the Nigerian context, people are ready to do what is called, quote-unquote, sinking the ship for their personal ambition. I take us back to memory.
That is a very good point.
Build up to 1979 elections that ushered in the Second Republic. There was an alliance between Malam Aminu Kano's PRP, Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe's MPP, Chief Obafemi Awolowo's UPN, Alhaji Waziri Ibrahim's GMPP, and Professor Braithwaite's NAP, that they are going to form an alliance against the NPN. Guess what happened? Down the line, just some few days to the closure of the primaries, Malam Aminu Kano and PRP pulled out of the alliance. And that is what scattered that alliance, and NPN went in and won the election and got 9 governors. What happens is, because this inaudible ambition is the reason why at the wee hour somebody can say, you know what, I would rather not support them than to support them. And that is that greed for power. Otherwise, by now, there wouldn't have even been this conversation about this, fragmentation. The diehard loyalists or followers of Atiku Abubakar and others are not ready to back down, for example, to vote for Peter Obi because of that identity politics. So to be honest with you, it is very tricky. I just hope that reason will prevail, that when they force their hands, they will realize that their political future and the political future of Nigeria is predicated on them now accepting that there is no other option but to come and back these two individuals. And I will expect these two individuals also to do this zero-sum game should not be the case. Sit on the table, discuss on how, at the end of the day, we can have a better Nigeria.
Right. Okay, Baba Yusuf, you've been an absolute star, but please stay with us, because I understand that at least one more of our guests is here, so we're going to take a short break and we'll be back imminently. Stay with us. Welcome back to Arise Prime Time. I'm Charles Anyegolu, and joining me now to continue our dissection of developments and to break down the week that was, two more out of the three commentators that we're still expecting. These people have become very proficient at scouring those headlines and unearthing everything that's both above and under the radar, and inspiring us with some unexpected analysis and illuminating beacons of knowledge. And they are the policy strategist and group CEO of the global investment and trade company, Baba Yusuf, the legislative consultant and public policy analyst, Dr. Chibuzo Okereke, is still being awaited, but the public policy analyst and development expert, Abba Kaka, has joined us. Thank you very much indeed, gentlemen, for being here. And let me come straight to you, Abba Kaka, because you've got some catching up to do, I'm afraid.
Sure.
Baba Yusuf was galloping ahead of you. So.
Okay. As usual.
Yeah, so here we are. But we were talking about the courts and political parties. I mean, that's the bit where we were when you arrived. The courts increasingly, the political parties increasingly seeming unable to resolve disputes internally without the judges having to do it for them. We're seeing conventions nullified, leaderships suspended, factions recognized and de-recognized almost weekly. Is this democracy correcting itself through the law, or is politics becoming dangerously over-judicialized? Let me put it that way.
Thank you very much. Actually, I would go for the second one because it's been politicized judicially.
Right.
Because in most cases in democracy, the judicial role is supposed to be minimal. And in the case of Nigeria, we have grown or graduated to a point where actually the courts are the ones deciding, not the Nigerian public, not the voters, that is.
But why do you think that's the case?
Because the politicians themselves are not sincere, they are not honest, they don't play by the rules. That's the reason why it's happening. Because, you know, if you have, as you were saying earlier, like the Second Republic politicians, you know, who stood for something, whose credentials and integrity are intact, and they are patriotic politicians, unlike what we have today. What we have today is greedy, selfish, and in most cases, criminally minded politicians.
Yeah, but it sounds like you're saying that the crisis is being induced by the opposition politicians themselves, whereas opposition figures are alleging that legal crises inside parties are being politically engineered from outside to destabilize challengers before 2027. Is there credible evidence of that in your assessment, or is the opposition simply blaming external forces for its own dysfunction?
Well, the opposition definitely also has internal issues and dysfunctions. But the main issue is being engineered from the outside. It's so obvious now. And we had never had it this bad. But they're still getting their acts together. And especially this Obi and Konkoso matchup, you know, is a sign of getting half of their acts together. And that's a really matchup that, the APC, have to worry about. And then on the other hand, Atiku Abubakar is now left on the ADC platform, which he might clinch. And that will become a very serious challenge to the ruling APC. But the unfortunate thing, as you said, is, voters are supposed to choose their leaders, not the courts. And in this case, the courts are being conventionally used to determine who becomes the president or who become leaders at the states, which is very unfortunate. This is not their job, but they are now forced to become one.
Right. Okay. Baba Yusuf, the APC today looks, let's face it, politically stronger, financially stronger, and organizationally stronger than any opposition party. But as I was discussing with Abba Kaka, their critics accuse the ruling party of benefiting from or even encouraging the implosion of rival parties. Is that fair politics in a democracy or dangerous democratic overreach?
Definitely, with respect to our evolving democracy, I would expect that even though, I always say this, Mao Zedong said politics is war without bloodshed, I wouldn't expect the ruling party to do the homework for the opposition. That's the fair thing. Having said that, I would expect the ruling party to leave a level playing field, Charles, for the opposition figures to fail on their own accounts, where we have a situation where it is becoming very clear the ruling party that is led by a leading democratic figure in this country, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, that fought for democracy. We are seeing clearly the hands, because why am I saying so? Last week, a man that I have a great respect for, and that is the Attorney General Minister of Justice, Lateef Fagbemi, SAN. I've been following him for decades. Fantastic gentleman with high level of integrity. Decided to, at this crucial point, as a defendant in the case Attorney General and INEC, where some people have gone to sue, that there are some opposition political parties have breached Section 225A.
They need to be deregistered.
And that they should be deregistered.
Yeah.
The Attorney General flipped and decided to be a plaintiff to support the deregistration of these political parties, which I feel, with profound respect to the Attorney General, shouldn't be in this case. I would like the APC to demonstrate the political sagacity on the field, if they are not afraid that they are not able to deliver, to the extent that they are aware that the people of the Federal Republic of Nigeria are so angry that no matter what they do, they will lose on a fair and square contest.
Right.
Why don't they leave the level playing field and determine and demonstrate to us that truly, as they say and their proponents are saying, that all is well with the 133 multidimensional people, that all is well with the people that are being killed and maimed every day. So, you see, they are making the APC more unpopular. But like I said, they are not supposed to do the homework for the oppositions. Let them leave the playing field level, and that will now be a credible thing to do for a democracy that is evolving, because unless we all have a democracy, the future of the country is bleak.
Okay. Well, but as somebody pointed out, I mean, if you look at all the people who supported Peter Obi and supported Rabiu Kwankwaso. 17 defections is not really knocking over the vase, is it?
Well, within a week it is, because we have several months to go. But this Obi and Kwankwaso ticket is a very serious matchup, and it's going to eat into the numbers of the president, especially in the South.
Yeah.
And starting from Southeast, you know, Obi did very well already in the last election in the South East, South, and Lagos, and some parts of the Southwest. But when it comes to the North, that's another problem for the APC, because if Alhaji Atiku Abubakar emerges as the candidate of the ADC,
that will gobble up a lot of
course,
votes, right?
because the North is where the bulk of the population are, and voters, 60% of them voted for the president. And right now, more than 80% are not happy with the president and the current administration in terms of insecurity, in terms of poverty, in terms of inflation, and you just name it. So the problem is going to be in the North.
Right.
The numbers in the South will be eaten up by Peter Obi, and in the North, well, because Kwankwaso himself can bring Kano and probably a couple of other states, Jigawa and maybe some parts of Kaduna. But the bulk of the North probably is going to vote for Atiku Abubakar, and that means another problem for the current administration.
That's a very interesting analysis. Well, I don't know if you want to comment briefly on that before we move on to the next thing.
Well, yes, that is the reality. There's a lot of infighting in Kano, even in Lagos. You can see the consensus was not going smoothly. The governors are the most powerful political actors. But of course, that is going to generate a lot of dissatisfaction. Don't forget, majority of the governors that defected from PDP and other parties have taken over structures from the legacy APC members, and they have been basically pushed on the sidelines. So that is going to be a backlash for the APC. But like I said, the backlash will only be impactful if the opposition political parties are united and purposeful. However, the likely outcome, especially in the North, like I always say, we are masters of protest vote, is that the leading political figures may not cut it at the presidential level, but you may see a lot governorship, state and federal assemblies and Senate winning, whether NDC, whether ADC, if they're able to get out of it, just like it happened in 2003. But you know what happened? 6 months later, they abandoned Peter Obi. 6 months later, they abandoned Atiku Abubakar, and all they come to the APC. But the truth is, the lack of a veritable, consistent platform is the issue. But like I said, they can do protest vote, and that's why I will use this opportunity to land. Nigerians should not be discouraged by this, because voter apathy will give APC the opportunity to win again. And I'm calling on all Nigerians, especially the elites, get your PVC. Don't be discouraged. Go out there and vote and represent. It's not enough for us to speak on TV.
You're doing better than Abakaka.
We need to go out and vote, because the lesser number we have, the more opportunity for the ruling party.
Very good point. And
so having watched that video, you see, we have to be careful, we have to be careful in the sense that if this thing is not working out, let people go. Let people go, because our leaders, the leaders that championed the independence of this country, have said this thing earlier, that this thing will not work. I don't know why we are still hanging on. That is what they said. That it will not work. They have seen that there are differences that we cannot stay. So what we keep getting is this kind of news, this kind of tribalism, this kind of things that are happening in Nigeria, until we do the needful. That is when we are going to live and live in peace. But for some people that forgot what the Europeans, the British talked about the major tribes in Nigeria, if you don't know before, and I'm sure some of you don't know, listen to the documentaries or the statements that Lord Frederick Lugard, what he said concerning the tribes of Nigeria, and the origin of denial of Igbos from piloting the affairs of Nigeria, because the Igbos are too smart. That is what the British did. Watch.
Quick one. Today I am bringing you the description by Frederick Lugard of the tribes he merged together. How Frederick Lugard, the man who created Nigeria, the person who created Nigeria is called Frederick Lugard. Okay, he's the one who created Nigeria in 1914, and this is what he has to say about the tribes he merged together in Nigeria. Okay, now I want to read directly from his words so I don't make mistake. Okay, now the first one, he says, the handover notes. Lord Lugard wrote to his colleague, Walter H. Lang. His colleague, his successor was Walter H. Lang, on the 25th of September, 1918. Okay, Nigeria was created in, he created Nigeria in 1914. Then in 1918, he handed over to Walter H. Lang. Okay, although he's been ruling as governor before the creation of Nigeria. Okay, and this is how it went. The quote reads inter alia. He started with the Hausas, then the Yorubas, then the Igbos. But first, let me start with the Igbos first. Now he says, these people of this is Igbo. These people of predominantly Eastern Nigeria are fiercely rebellious. Now the Igbos, Frederick Lugard, the man who created Nigeria, said you are a rebel. He said you are a rebel, okay? And you know what is a rebel, okay? Somebody who does not bow to suppression, who does not bow to opposition, somebody who does not bow to compare, okay? Every great man in history was once tagged a rebel, okay? So long as you can't submit, so long as you can't be subdued, okay, you're a rebel, okay? So he described you as a rebel. That is what Frederick Lugard had to say about you as an Igbo. Now, he went ahead to say, fiercely rebellious with no regard for authority. He says you don't have any regard for authority. Okay, this one I will blame your traditional system, because the Igbos has a different traditional system from what the Westerners introduced. Okay, Igbos don't believe in one person who is a king or a ruler, or one person who is magnified over others and all that, and he should be worshipped and a lot of things. Igbos don't believe that. It is not part of their system from old, okay? Igbos believe in a system whereby the elders, they have their council of elders, okay? They adjudicate on their issues and settle their matters and all that. The people, Igbo Beze, okay? Everybody in Igbo land is a king. So the system that was brought to Nigeria or brought to Igbo land contradicts what the Igbos were initially having, what they had in the past. So I think this was the greatest problem that these people had. So he said they are rebellious and had no regard for authority. I think this was actually what affected it. Okay. Now, though industrious, he acknowledged that the Igbos were industrious. Okay. They had the spirit to produce, to invent, to innovate, the brain to think out something and go for it and achieve it. Okay. So he said that though industrious and religious, he said you are Igbos are religious. Okay. Well, this one I would say it's spirituality. Okay. Because they themselves, they call it religion because it's not associated to them. Okay. As Africans, we are spiritual people. Okay. But they themselves, they know what they know is religion. Okay. So that means Igbos were deeply rooted in spirituality. Okay. That is what he's saying. Indifferent to the objective of Her Majesty. That is to say, you oppose the objective of Her Majesty. That is the plans, the things Your Majesty's, the Queen of England has brought out. You oppose it. Okay, you don't always agree to the plans of the Queen of England and the crown. Okay, the throne of England. Okay, he said you're indifferent to the Queen of England and the crown. And he went ahead to say that they are highly dangerous to be trusted with. That the Igbos are highly dangerous to be trusted with. This is where the problem of the Igbos started in Nigeria. Frederick Lugard made it open to Nigerians that you should not trust an Igbo man with power. This is where the problem of the Igbos started from. This is the point. That is why they made sure they push power to the north and the west. Okay, and they told them not to make sure that power doesn't get into the hands of an Igbo man because they cannot be trusted with power. What does he mean by this statement? This is the reason why Nnamdi Azikiwe was not able to rule Nigeria. This is the reason why they made sure he doesn't rule Nigeria. This is the reason why the Igbos has been sidelined from leadership in Nigeria. Even when they have what it takes, they are the most credible. Even when they are the most competent when it comes to everything. And from their record, they have always been at the forefront of everything. They have always been the best. If you check the record of Nigeria before the Civil War, they have always been at the top. Call it judiciary, call it whatever. The Igbos has always been at the top. Education and otherwise. So because of this single fact, because they cannot be controlled, because they cannot be oppressed, because they cannot be subdued, they cannot allow themselves to be puppets. They cannot act as stooges to the West. This is the reason why they have refused to give an Igbo man power. Because giving an Igbo man power means that there will be breakthrough, there will be development, there will be light. So this is the reason Nnamdi Azikiwe was the biggest threat the West had. A man who commanded civil servants. Civil servants have to sit in their houses while the West, the white people, have to work. He caused a lot of strikes. Not until the white people have to negotiate before civil servant could start work. Nnamdi Azikiwe was very powerful. He was the person at the forefront of Nigeria's independence. But due to the fact that the West feared him, the West saw him as a threat. The West saw him that he is a man that they cannot control. He's a rebel. He's a threat. He cannot be oppressed. He cannot be subdued. He cannot be suppressed. He cannot be a stooge. He cannot do our bid. So because of that, make sure the Igbos don't have access to power. And that is why Nigeria is suffering today. And that is why Igbo has never produced any president in Nigeria. So this is all what they said about the Igbos. I'm done with this topic. Stay tuned for another interesting topic. Thank you.
All right, my people, I want to thank you for coming along to this extent in this video. Please like this video, share it. If you have anything you want to say, please drop it in the comments. And until I come your way next time.